with Lander specifically, he was on vincristine, and that was very difficult on his, digestive system. It really slows down the intestines, and so I knew the microbiome was important. Didn't know enough about it to make good decisions, and I just in my soul felt Miralax was not the answer, and so diving into nutrition is where the enzymes came up, and making sure the good bugs are in there. How I explain it to him: good bugs and bad bugs, and so with you being an absolute expert, and something else I wanted to tell you, I appreciate so much how you are not in this box. You're willing to learn. Like, just I feel that with you every time I hear you on a podcast or something. So I do appreciate that you're always trying to learn. Can you tell us why we're maybe seeing this epidemic of gut problems?
Great question. It's the unintended consequences of technological innovation. And so you have to go back in time. If you go back before when World War II happened, the United States dropped the nuclear bomb on Japan, finally ending the war. The Japanese surrendered that war shortly afterwards. And the baby boom happened. And all of a sudden, there was an explosion of the population all around the world. And the governments of the world started to recognize that the old patterns of farming and people moving to the city and stuff wouldn't be able to supply sufficient amount of food to the population. So they got, well-meaning boards and regulatory boards and agricultural boards and these things of what we needed to do. And what was implemented in short order in the next little while was monoculturing farming. And when monoculture farming came in, prior to that, farming for thousands of years involved a thing called crop rotation. You grow your crops, you grow tomatoes here one year, and you grow squash here the next year, and you grow potatoes the next year, and then you have 1 year where you grow hemp, and then you plow that hemp back into the ground to reconstitute the soil, and you let the soil go fallow. And if you go out to the west, out into Western Canada, for example, so I'm from Canada, you'll actually see the big farms. They'll have one little section, which is where the farmers used to eat their food. And then they had the monoculturing one. Maybe that was subsidized and government-sponsored programs. And then what began to happen as the mineral content of the soil went down, they couldn't grow the crops fast enough. They would yield them. So they used the leftover nitrogen from all the bombs that were irrelevant and left over from the war to put the nitrogen on the soil. Now, what happens? You put the nitrogen on the soil, it grows the vegetables and fruits much faster. However, you give up essential amino acids, you give up enzymes, and you have less vitamins and minerals within that food. Now, these proteins are very important for the health and durability of the plant. In other words, how hardy that plant is and how resistant it is to disease and bugs and things like that. So after a few generations of that, all of a sudden, various types of diseases started to wipe out entire crops. Blight, and of course, insurance agencies started to get, crop protection and all these sort of things. So there was industries built out of this. But long story short, the chemical company said, let's add herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides to the food, onto the vegetables and stuff. So that's came into vogue, and the various chemical plants and fertilizers and the marketing campaigns that came on it. Now, so how those chemicals work is they interrupt the natural enzymatic activity of the bugs, of the organism that's trying to kill you, so much so that it will kill them. And enzymes are the difference between the living and the dead, between stones, plants, and people. And you have what's called an enzyme bank account. And this is well illustrated by a fellow by the name of Dr. Edward Howell, who wrote Enzyme Nutrition and Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. And he determined back then, by doing all these different species, by checking out all these different species, dogs, cats, rats, you name it. And he found that if you fed them an enzymatically deficient diet over three generations, number one, they started to exert a massive amount of genetic-based diseases. Number two, they started to elicit strange sociological behaviors. And number three, the species lost the ability to procreate. Well, fast forward, it's been 3 generations since we implemented these components in the world. And we see all of those three playing out in the human population, just as Howell suggested. So my mentor was a guy by the name of Dr. Michael O'Brien, and he was instrumental in helping Bernard Jensen overcome cancer at the end of his life. And Bernard even wrote the book on digestive health. A lot of people don't know that. And his last book, I think, was called Come Alive, which documents, he dedicated it to Dr. O'Brien, and he explained to him a little bit about some of the things that he used to implement in order to keep his recovery. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not suggesting that enzymes and probiotics can help a person or will cause the recovery from a serious illness. What I'm saying is the deficiency in these elemental components, which are a natural part of our food supply throughout all of history, are now devoid thanks to chemicalization, irradiation, packaging, and processing that occurs with our food supply chain, not to mention all the foods that are manufactured completely artificially. So when you do this, you disrupt your digestive system. Now, if we look at the statistics that are out there, 12% of the emergency hospital visits in this country are related to gastrointestinal related illnesses. 100 million people on any given day have some sort of digestive discomfort, and over 25% of those people are on prescription medication. So medication is always just a way to mitigate the symptoms of a disease, because oftentimes the causes are unknown or are multivariate in their factors. And what I would say to any person who is experiencing any sort of digestive distress, weight gain, over in excess, a healthy body weight, they have to address the lifestyle issues that are related to, or even the extreme case, some sort of metabolic or disease-based condition. And what I would suggest to people, and this is the theory that we put forward, and that is health and disease are the natural result of the environmental conditions, both internally and externally, of that given individual over the genetic predispositions that may be present in that organism.